All right, excellent. So the Forest Pest Outreach Program, we provide education and outreach all throughout the state of Illinois. I conduct forest pest trainings as well, in addition to the education and outreach. We identify high-risk pathways, so understanding how firewood could potentially move pests around is extremely important. And then we use safeguarding systems, right? So we have systems put in place for monitoring, we have systems for putting in place for any type of management or education or outreach. So I think that that's important for us to know. And then I have tons of resources. And if we were all together, I would be handing out all of my resources. But unfortunately, we don't. I have great QR codes, so definitely get your cameras ready. My job is to make sure that we are looking at early detection and prevention. And so I'm not funded through the forest health side of it. I'm actually funded on the import export side. During COVID, we were able to get our dogs trained up. The dogs are extremely effective in sniffing out any type of forest pests. So Indiana uses them. There's a couple states out east and then out west, and hopefully sometime in the near future, Illinois will get them as well. For those of you that have seen my presentation before, you know that this is a standard invasion curve. I use this all the time because over on the left-hand side, it talks about the area infested. So I want to keep you in the bottom left-hand corner, the least amount of area infested, the least amount of time, and the least amount of control costs. So unfortunately, where that red arrow is typically in a timeline 5 to 7 years. It's often between containment and long-term management. So if I think about spotted lanternfly, the cool news about spotted lanternfly is that safeguard system that we had in place for reporting it allowed us to have a rapid response to the first detection, the first positive confirmation. Asian longhorn beetle was here in the late 1990s in Ravenswood, outside of Chicago. Um, and we eradicated Asian longhorn beetle, but I'll tell you what, Asian longhorn beetle is active in Ohio, it's active in South Carolina. It's an active pest, and it can move around as well. We've got a great program with spongy moth, and we'll talk a little bit about spongy moth. Spongy moth is a long-term management. We've been dealing with it for about 140 years, and we have a great slow spread program, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. We have some good news from the survey results from last year. Super happy about that. I put this in here because I need for us to just start figuring out how wet days and dry days start affecting what's going on with tree pests and pathogens, right? So if you're looking at the temperature, last year we were the 18th warmest on record, which is amazing. And for precipitation, we were the 23rd driest. So we had about 7 less inches. But if you look over on the right-hand side, you're seeing up and around Cook County, the number of intense rain events are increasing. We had a large and impactful dust storm in May. So if you think about out west and you think about, all of the soil and everybody's, getting their fields ready, well, when it's really dry, that wind picks up and it moves that soil, and soil erosion can be significant when we're looking at the health for our trees. In Champaign-Urbana, it was the second driest year on record. And then in Springfield, it was the snowiest December. And then unfortunately, we've had 141 tornadoes statewide. This is a real big concern when we are talking about pests. Tornadoes move pests around. You get these high wind events, you get these storm events, you get heavy rain associated with them, and those pests move rapidly from one area to another. It can move from one state to another. So Missouri or Iowa, you name it. These storms bring it with it not only high winds and damage, but it also can move pests and pathogens around. So it's interesting. I have a note here to check out the 2025 Forest Health Highlights, and I'll talk a little bit more at the end of the presentation about that. Dr. Frederick Miller does a wonderful summary. So let's talk a little bit about tree problems. This is just a quick review. You all know this, but I think it's also really important to kind of tee up why we're looking at tree problems and where do we look for them. So if you've got the crown is that top part of the tree, right? anything that's going on with that tree, if you've got signs of decreased vigor, or you see signs of stress, or you see potentially pest presence, right? In this picture on the lower left-hand side, I'm looking at that dead area. Anything more than 25 to 30% of a dead, dying area on the top part of that tree is super stressed. And when that tree gets stressed at the top part of the crown, it starts to impact below ground. So that image on the right-hand side of the tree and that root, see how like constricted that root is? That we want that to be elongated. We want it to be past the leaves. Line chestnut borer sometimes comes in when our oak trees get stressed. It could be drought, it could be too much water, which oftentimes presents itself the same on the tree. If you're looking at the cambium layer, think of emerald ash borer. Anytime there is a disruption from nutrients moving from below ground to above ground, or from above ground to below ground, that tree is really challenged. And so you're seeing these larval galleries that is basically like somebody took and like you're in an elevator and somebody took and hit the stop button right away. That's exactly what happens when these pests come in, these borers that get underneath that growing layer. And then roots, remember I talked about, just 2 slides ago, I want to see these beautiful roots. I want to see them out beyond the canopy or the drip line. So the edge of those leaves all the way straight down. Look how fibrous, look how healthy it is. Oftentimes we know what the function is. It provides anchor and storage and absorption. And then we have different types of roots. So that's small, fibrous. Think about like tiny little hairs. You've got lateral shoots growing, and then you've got that beautiful sinker root, which you see right in the center of that. But here on the left-hand side, you know what? If you've got a root like this, and I would highly encourage you, if your tree has dieback, do yourself a favor. Don't dig too far, but just start digging around the top, inch to see what kind of root system is going on. Do they look like this where they're like nubby fingers, or do they have fine fibrous root hairs? This is a damaged root, right? There is no nutrient uptake. This is a challenge. And so knowing what's going on with the tree above ground also helps you to figure out kind of what might be going on below ground. 80% of the tree's problem is below ground. So if I've got a defoliator and it's getting rid of all the food factory, all these leaves are coming off, that root base is going to shrink. So we're going to talk a little bit about what's new or new-ish this year. This elm zigzag sawfly, yikes. It's a new invader. We are into the second year of this pest. Unfortunately, I don't have a link to the pest alert, but if you look up elm zigzag sawfly pest alert, you should be able to find that pest alert. There's a sawfly for every single, tree, to be honest with you. It's less than 1 centimeter. You're never going to see it. What you're most likely going to see is you're going to see that heavy defoliation. The females can live 1 to 6 days. They're parthenogenic, meaning they have their own eggs. So as soon as they hatch, they have their eggs, they feed, and they want to lay their eggs, and then they die. They could have up to 5 generations a year, which is mind-blowing, right? If you think about defining an invasive species, a pest that can have multiple generations within 1 growing season and lay up to 50 eggs is absolutely astonishing. You are going to, if you do see it, you're going to see this very, very unique pattern from the outside in, moving to the mid vein. It's got a zigzag pattern, very, very clear. We've seen it in some of the surveys that we're doing, but it's very, very difficult to watch. Over on the upper right-hand side, it's difficult to see. On the upper right-hand side, you're seeing really what we would consider to be a heavy infestation. That sawfly is pretty much chewed out, worked out. This could be multiple generations as well. This was at the end of 2024. You're seeing those leaves completely defoliated. Elm leaves, if they're defoliated early in the spring, they will re-leaf. But if you think about kind of what's going on, the amount of time and the amount of energy that tree has to put forward to re-leaf is highly significant. Here's a life cycle. So you're seeing on the top, you've got the egg, And then over on the right, you've got the larva. And right now, so we have an active population in Cook County, and we're monitoring it. So right now, the larva's out. They are feeding. I have not seen any of the adults. Here's the defoliation pattern. Over on the left-hand side, if you look at the palm of the hand, you're starting to see this kind of unique, almost wave-like appearance. I think that's also very indicative of this feeding. Oftentimes, the picture over on the right-hand side is what we see late season. Hosts, American elm, winged elm, Chinese elm, Siberian elm. I'll be honest with you guys, Siberian elm looks poor all the time. If you see a Siberian elm and you're looking at it from a distance, it looks like it's being defoliated, but definitely look at it up close. And elm trees are just loaded with tiny leaves, so it's oftentimes really hard unless you are up and you start to see this complete defoliation pattern. They defoliate from the bottom up, and typically they leave that top part of the crown intact. So 2024 versus 2025. In 2024, this is the picture. This is the forest preserve. There was the shelter there. There are a number of elm trees on either side of the path. And when we looked at it, we were like, oh my goodness, look, you can see that defoliation from the bottom up, right? Still, crown is intact. And then what happened? This was 2025. We surveyed, we found adults, and do we see any feeding? No. So you're thinking, is it bad? Is it good? Is it not? What's going on? Heavy defoliation? What was happening? So we decided we were going to continue this year. We're going to do the surveys, and we're going to really find out what is going on. Are the cool temperatures keeping these sawflies at bay, right? They might be doing that. In 2024, was it hot? Was it dry? Were they super happy? Were there a lot of feeding going on? Did the wind move them away? They are a strong flyer. They can fly up to 50 miles, which is crazy too, to think about how easily they could potentially move around. So in 2025, we did trapping. We had at least 2 generations. So what you're seeing in kind of like right now, actually it was about a week ago, temperatures were a little bit warmer last year, but you're starting to see that spike where you're seeing the number of adults. And then in July, you saw that spike go up again. Unfortunately, we didn't continue the trapping past the second week in August, but this year we will, so we can see whether or not we have 2 generations or we have 3 generations. So there's more information to come. Moving on, we've got a not so new, but we do have a big concern. And I put this in here specifically because I wanted to make sure that you all are aware of this pest. Box tree moth is an emerging threat to boxwoods. Me personally, if you have a boxwood and you want to buy more boxwood, I would hold off this year. Sorry, nurseries, but boxwoods are really challenging. If you do buy a boxwood, you should inspect it before you buy it. Make sure there is no feeding damage going on. I do have pictures on that. We just had a new quarantine put in, and I'll talk about that. So it's an invasive moth. It's native to Asia. It was first detected in Canada. We put in these really good quarantines to make sure that any material that was damaged coming out of Canada into Michigan were actually stopped and inspected. What's different about Illinois versus Azerbaijan, right? So they have native boxwood, and they have boxwood everywhere. If you look out into their fields and their hills, they just have boxwood. It's highly invasive. And this pest was able to actually get in and do significant amount of damage. In Illinois, we don't have boxwood in our native system. So it's not a native plant. It's a highly valued commercial plant, but it is not a native plant that we have as far as in our woodlands and our forest composition. It does spread rapidly. It does have a very destructive feeding habit, and it is a challenge for existing boxwood, right? That's a challenge. I mean, we know that there are numerous areas within in Illinois that have a very high commercial impact for this pest. Right now, has been detected in Michigan, Ohio, and New York, and the latest quarantine was put in Virginia. If you are traveling and if you are thinking about potentially buying any type of boxwood material in Michigan or Ohio or even, New York or Virginia, please don't. Just make sure that you do not move this type of material into the States. Here is the leaf defoliation. It is a heavy feeder. You're going to see dieback. You're going to see rapid dieback. So oftentimes with boxwood, that's where they're planted. They're planted in a big grouping, and that pest can come through and just wipe it out in one season. So that was in Ohio. What can you do if you inspect your boxwoods right? Report any findings to local extension or the Illinois Department of Agriculture. Don't move boxwoods. And then the control, there are insecticides, there are pheromone traps. You can prune out any infested branches, but just making sure that you are aware of actually why that boxwood is browning out and dying. Make sure you take pictures too if you're emailing the extension or Illinois Department of Agriculture. Our pests of concern, we have spotted lanternfly was found in 2023. Many of you know about this pest, but I am funded in order to make sure that I provide education and outreach on anything that's federally regulated. And right now in Illinois, lanternfly is not regulated, and we're interested to see where is spotted lanternfly. Are they just going to remain kind of in these hot spots in Cook County? Will it spread out? We don't know, but we certainly need your help. This was the first site that we found it. It was in Fuller Park, right around 45th Street, highly contained. We've been there for a number of years, and we've been removing egg masses, so that population is slowly coming down. You're seeing the female right there. That was late season, almost early flight. That yellow part of her body is the egg basket. These are the egg masses that we want people to look for. If you start to see anything that's kind of like a purpley gray and it's kind of putty-like and elongated, definitely take a picture of that. Definitely send it to us. And we have a reporting site. This is where it came in. It came in from Indiana. No offense to anybody from Indiana, but you can keep your pests. This is the rail yard, right where it looks like the number 7 on its side. Thankfully, it did not come. See the big red rail line that kind of cuts through Illinois right in the center and moves out? That was originally the first model, if you will, about where spotted lanternfly would most likely come in. We know it's moving on rail. We know it's moving on transportation. We've been talking about this since 2014. So this is a pest that we were waiting for. We were well prepared. I think that we're probably up to about 5 or 6 locations now in Chicago. What you're seeing in those blue dots, those are all the reports that came in that said, hey, I think I've got a lanternfly. And oftentimes people will take a picture of it and it's just one. And what we want to see reproductive populations. So we want to see, are there 2s, 4s, 6? These pests like to be together. And so the varying colors are just the 2023, 24, and then 25. If you look at Lake Michigan and you see that cluster, one of the things that we're looking at are urban farms, a hot spot for that. Oftentimes in Cook County, urban farms are near areas that are close to rail, and Tree of Heaven is the #1 preferred host for spotted lanternfly. And the coexistence of the rail line, and you've got Tree of Heaven, and then you've got this area that may or may not be highly active, but it could be a potential hotspot for spotted lanternfly populations to build year over year. This is just an image of the rail. So we've found active populations if you move north on the rail line. And so this year we will be focusing our efforts and trying to track the movement and track these hotspots and then help local communities address what's going on. We have a great new resource that I can share with you as well. So here's just a little bit of a life cycle. Spotted lanternfly is not going to kill the tree, it's going to wilt the tree. So it's going to be a heavy sap sucker. So right now we're April to August. If you think that you have a tick on your body and it's a bad year for ticks, I don't want to talk about ticks right now. We can talk about it at the end of the program, but it's a very bad year for ticks, and especially seed ticks. So spotted lanternfly, when it's in its first instar, is super small. So make sure you know whether or not you have spotted lanternfly or a tick or something else. And it is a one season, so it will go through 3 to 4 changes in its life stage. It'll go from black to black and white to red, white, and black, and then you'll see the adult right there in the center of the picture. From September to October, I think November is a little bit long for us. That's when you'll most likely see them in flight. And then from December to March, we've got the egg masses, which is at the bottom. And I have a better picture of the egg masses. You can look for egg masses now. And if you see something, definitely take a picture, email it to us, and then remove it. Oh, here's a picture of Tree of Heaven. It's really easy to identify. Here are the hosts: grapes, black walnut, hops, maple. They like silver maple and red maple, willow, apple, birch, sycamore. I mean, you name it. It is a generalist. That Tree of Heaven oftentimes looks like sumac. And if you get up to it and you see them and you crush that leaf, oftentimes it smells like burnt peanut butter. And I've never tasted burnt peanut butter, but I've smelled a number of those Tree of Heaven and they stink. Looking at the piercing mouth part, what you look at that. Wow, man, that is something to be reckoned with. On the tree, you're going to see oozing. You're going to see stinging insects that are really attracted to that honeydew that they're taking out. If you think about maple, right? Think about maple tree. When you open that bark, you just take that piercing mouth part and you open it. All that sugar's coming out. Everything, especially now, right? Everything's going from below ground to above ground, and that tree is just a pumping station. We saw a walnut over on the right-hand side. That walnut is yellow, it's chlorotic, it's wilting. If you see a walnut tree looking like that, definitely inspect it. They do like grapes, but they don't feed on the actual grape itself. They feed on the petiole. So that connecting part from the vine or the branch into that fruit, that's where that faucet is, right? That's where all the nutrients are. So everybody always asks me, what is the natural predator? Natural predator is a praying mantis. So praying mantis actually takes its piercing mouth part and then just snaps off the head and then sucks out all the juices. In China, they don't have a problem they have spotted lanternfly, but they don't have a problem. I don't know if they have a higher population of praying mantis, but in their urban and their rural area, their tree species diversity is vastly different than ours. They don't have as many trees, and those trees are very different. So they don't have these big pockets of ash or big pockets of oak or big pockets of elms or maples. It is very, very diverse. And so we think that is a really good urban planning strategy, and certainly a good strategy for homeowners is not to plant the same type of species, and just in case a pest were to come along. How can you help? See it, snap it, email it, and then you can squish it. Report it at lanternfly@illinois.edu. Take a photo. We have to have a photo. We really do. Oftentimes people will be like, hey, I've got it. We're like, okay, where's the picture? We use that to verify it. And then any details you have. Was it a big population? Were there just 2 or 4? Or where was it found on the tree? On the bottom, see that population? That's a relatively 2 to 3-year-old population. The older the population, or the more the multiple generations increase every single year because those egg masses. So if you've got 30 egg masses one year and they hatch, and you got another 30 and another 30 and another 30, it just starts to compound. So you can look for egg masses. I took this picture and it's kind of very unique. It's a very light purpley gray color. and there's a zigzag pattern that goes back and forth. And she basically starts to cover almost all of her egg masses and then quits. Takes usually about 30 minutes. There's Joy. She was hunting for egg masses. She looks a little frightened, but she was very effective at doing it. And then over here is just the uncovered egg mass. So you're probably going to see last year or the year before egg mass, and then a partially covered one during the growing season. And then the third one, that cracked one, that's oftentimes what we would see. And then if they've hatched out, they're little tiny slits in those. They look like sausages almost linked together, and those slits are where the eggs have hatched out. Get your camera ready because here's a new spotted lanternfly resource. It's for homeowners and landowners. This was put together by a collaborative effort from USDA APHIS, the Bureau of Forestry in Chicago, University of Illinois Extension, their forestry extension, the Morton Arboretum, our Illinois Natural History Survey. We all work together. We put this great resource together. It's double-sided. It's got a lot of really good information. So please take a picture of that. And if you don't get it, let me know and we can send the PDF and that information will be available. Next up, Asian longhorned beetle. This is what keeps me up at night. See that big larva that's hanging out right in the center of that branch. August is tree check month, but I think every month should be tree check month. Asian longhorn beetle is a big beetle. It's a lazy pest. It doesn't want to go anywhere. So if you are a maple tree and you are healthy and you are Asian longhorn beetle, you guys are going to be together for a number of years. They do slight feeding damage, but they do more borer damage. So think about emerald ash borer. Asian longhorn beetle is a borer. They tunnel their way in. On the bottom, you can start to see that corkscrewing. So they've taken this like big corkscrew and they churn, and they eat their way out of the center of the branch. And during the winter, if this was a branch, they would be hiding out in the heartwood in the center of that, and they can stay there all winter long and be fully protected. There's the galleries or the chambers, if you will, of a highly infested branch. What is Asian longhorn beetle? It's a wood boring beetle. They do the most amount of damage. It's black and white, and it's got these beautiful antennae that just wrap around the whole body. The legs have this bluish gray. They have sticky pads, and it's banded, meaning there's alternating colors. And our native borers have markings on the necks or the thorax, and Asian longhorn beetle doesn't. It has a very unique spotted pattern on it. And it is the #1 pest threat in Illinois, certainly to all of our hardwoods. It's a generalist. So again, Asian longhorn beetle, look at that maple, elm, birch, willow, horse chestnut, buckeye, ash tree, hackberry, cottonwood. I mean, that's it. That's all we got, right? I mean, other than oak, it doesn't like oak, thankfully. This was found in a couple years ago in South Carolina. And this is a really swampy area. And so it was very, very hard to, first of all, detect what was going on. The homeowners saw the flight Asian longhorn beetle moving around, and they realized, because it is such a big pest, but then getting equipment in and getting surveillance done and trying to delimit where Asian longhorn beetle actually is moved to from that site, that the radius. It's about 60 miles west of the port of St. Charles. I think the cool part about this infestation is that the eDNA, the electronic DNA, was taken, and the DNA of this pest did not come from outside of the United States, which was good news in the sense that it wasn't imported, right? It did come from, it was most likely, kind of Ohio-ish, like very similar eDNA. So we don't know for sure, but we would assume so. Signs of infestation, again, you're going to see that frass. You're going to see wet sap on that trunk. That frass on the bottom is just like pencil shavings. You're going to see dead branches. You're going to see one dead and dying branch. Typically, that's what you'd start to see during the summer. You look up, you're like, wow, we got one dead and dying branch. What's going on? For me, I'd be looking at it going, I'll get to it. I need to prune it. but on inspection, it was infested. So you can see these absolutely. There's feeding damage too very early on. There's almost like a deer where it's scratching almost, or just scratching at it. That's that chewing mouth part that's trying to get into the growing cambium. There, if you could take a number 2 pencil, and I have these Ticonderoga number 2 pencils to hand out. So if you ever see me, ask me if I've got a pencil. 9 times out of 10, I know I will. But if you could take a pencil and put it into a perfectly round hole, about an inch deep, you need to have that tree evaluated. Asian longhorned beetle only makes that really deep, long hole. Because think about it, it's coming from the center, from the heartwood out, right? It's got that far distance to travel. It's got that big chewing mouth part. And August is tree check month because that's when the adults come out. Moving on to spongy moth. The spongy moth, there it is. It's got 5 pairs of blue dots and 6 pairs of red dots. It looks very cute, but it is very, very ferocious. This was an area in Cook County, and the nickname is called the Enchanted Forest. And sadly, there was nothing enchanting about it because there was a heavy, heavy, heavy infestation. Look at that center image where you just see all of these caterpillars moving around, just trying to figure out where they can feed next. And spongy moth is a generalist as well. So when I mentioned we've got a great slow the spread program, a system in place, if you're looking at, and I don't have an arrow, but if you're looking at kind of some Minnesota all the way down to Illinois, just south of Cook County, that square just south of Cook County, I think is Starved Rock. Starved Rock has had a fairly consistent pattern going on. All of those counties that are lit up, those are positive counties, and there are treatment blocks. The good news, and I mentioned this before, the good news in Illinois, yay, we have no treatments this year. I mean, goodness gracious. Knock on wood, that's a good thing. That means that the work that the Slow the Spread Foundation, that the Illinois Department of Agriculture, that USDA APHIS, our plant protection quarantine team, the surveying that they're doing, the management that they're doing is really working. We're on the downside right now. It is cyclical. I told you before, it's been here for 140 years. So it is cyclical. It will come back. But for right now, we have no treatment. So it is good news for us. Over on the right-hand side, you're seeing the female, which is the white, and then the smaller moth is a brown moth is typically the smaller. Females are typically larger because of their egg-laying capacity with some of the pests that we have. Looking at the defoliation, this is mind-blowing. We talked about how weather, dry days and wet days, dry, droughty days increases nitrogen. And what is nitrogen for a leaf eater? It is just a big old vitamin shot. And so for us, knowing that if we had 3 years of drought, those leaves, if we could get out and test them, would have a higher amount of nitrogen, meaning they are healthier, they are more tastier, right? They love to eat the things that are nutritionally valuable. And why is that? So that their egg laying, their fecundity, their ability to have multiple generations increases exponentially. So again, that very similar defoliating pattern, this was taken in that forest area, and this was done right in the middle, kind of the end of July, beginning of August. If you're looking at the trees on the bottom, those are maple trees. Spongy moth does not like maple trees, so fair enough. But if you're in an area and you don't see them, but you can look up and you think, wow, that canopy, that's like really a big opening. It's really bright. These trees should be leafed out. They're healthy, they're alive, but there's no leaf on. That ought to tell you too that there's something going on. Springtime, I say wintertime and springtime, my 2 favorite seasons. Get out and look at those egg masses. I will tell you that is a heavily infested tree with spongy moth, but I wanted to make sure that you had that image. Spotted lanternfly is gray. Spongy moth is tan or buff colored, they call it. So you start to see that. You definitely take a scraper card. You can take a little plastic, identification card that you got in your wallet that you're not using, and just scrape them gently off the tree, put them in a bag, and get rid of that bag. Do not move them around in your home landscape. Jumping worms, it's 10 minutes after 12, so we do have some time, and I'm whizzing through this. Got a lot of questions on jumping worms, and I love jumping worms. I'm passionate about them. I know them. I have spent a number of years studying them. I did my graduate research on jumping worms. So if you have any questions at the end of this presentation, I'd be happy to chat about it, but hopefully you'll start to see some hopeful management options. So oftentimes when you're looking at social media, you're seeing this like they're everywhere. And you know what? If they are present, then they are typically abundant, meaning they are parthenogenic, right? So they come with their own eggs. So they don't need to find a mate. They just need a spot to lay their eggs. And oftentimes when you got a cool, wet, a closed canopy, so there's not a lot of sunlight, you got a lot of maple trees hanging around, you can have an infestation. Perfect way to identify them. So they're starting to come out right now. I think next week is a good week. We'll have 4 or 5 days in the 70s, and it'll be warmer. So those, this is a late season species. It definitely likes to come out when it is warmer, when that soil temperature warms up to anything above 55 degrees. Over on the left-hand side, if you look at that like round band, that's called a clitellum. It's called I call it a banded clitellum, and it's banded meaning it goes all the way around. Versus our European night crawler on the right-hand side, the red. I don't think I have an arrow. I don't. I'll go back. If you look on the upper right side, you'll see this really thin kind of red band. It doesn't go all the way around the night crawler, and it's got more of a dip. It's got like a saddle, they call it, to it. Jumping worms over on the left are very dark. They have that very unique creamy banded clitellum. The reason why they have different colors is that they feed differently within the soil profile. So jumping worm sits on top, and then our Lumbricus rubellus species, they move up and down the soil profile. So again, very, very different feeding patterns. They do different types of things. So let's see where they are. In Cook County, I'll be honest with you, the dark blue is confirmed, the light blue is suspect county. It doesn't mean that the whole county is infested. It just means that once there's a positive county confirmation, that state gets lit up. There is a task force, and so if you are interested and you are in some of the counties that have not been confirmed and you do spot them, you please let the University of Illinois Extension know, take a picture, and you can send it in. You can send it in to me at the Morton Arboretum too. I'm always happy to take your email. The range is expanding. I think that we've seen it in different years grow more or less, right? So sometimes this is like a perfect year. For me, this is a perfect setup. In Northern Illinois, it's been cool. It's been wet, right? It hasn't been hot and dry. And so they like that. They like that really cool moisture. If we were to have a super droughty spring like we had a couple years ago, they don't like that, and the populations don't seem to be as high. So that's just what I've been able to observe when I'm doing field studies. They get around by human transport. I mentioned those large storm events can move them, thinking about how they sit in that upper part of the soil profile. And if we get a big gully washer rain, it can move them quite far if it's close to a stream or any type of riparian system. We call them high impact ecosystem engineers. They alter the soil structure, and that is the number one thing that they do. If you look at this, and I have a close up, if you look at the picture and you're starting to see, it almost looks like coffee grounds. That soil is very friable, I mean, it's like super crumbly, and that is what they do to the soil. That is what is consistent. It is visible here in Illinois. is visible in Wisconsin. It's as if you haven't left the site. They are the same. If you have an invasion, that's what that soil profile looks like. It can deplete the nutrients depending on the density, and it can accelerate erosion process, like I just mentioned before. And then it does consume organic material. I would say that the extent and the amount is based on the amount of the species density. So if you have more, obviously they're going to eat more. So so that kind of goes together. They convert the soil into that coffee ground castings look, and then they reduce the water holding capacity. So the biology and the life cycle, the populations can grow, 10 times more than other worm species. They live in the upper soil. They're parthenogenic. They uh, they die in, it says they die in cold conditions. I'll be honest with you, they die in the winter. So I should change that. They will perish in drought and high heat, and then they will not overwinter in the cold temperatures like we've had. They shed, right? That's their method. They lay their cocoons at the end of August, beginning of September, into September, potentially in October. But then that's it. Then they die back. This is just a really good visual. It talks about the juveniles in May and June. I have seen some juveniles earlier this month, which seemed very early to me. And then the adults are out from July, August, September. They're a late season. Our other, European night crawlers, they've already fed, they've already mated, they are well done. But these guys hang on late in the season. So if you think about honeysuckle, you think about buckthorn, they're still green, they're still leafing out, there's still material around. They don't feed on the leaves, but that root system is very active. They don't feed on the roots, but that area around it is still very viable with microbial activity. Here's the location of where they are in the soil profile. Right there, they're epigeic, so they hang out right there. They do not move down. So our earthworms that we love, they take that organic material and they move to the bottom, and they create these tunnels, and that creates healthy soil. It creates porosity, right? It allows water to filter in. It allows nutrients to filter in. With jumping worms, they don't. I think oftentimes our European night crawlers are there. They worked over the soil. Jumping worms can come in and they can deal with just like the soil. They don't have to really work very hard in order to eat. They like leaf litter. They like down logs, right? If that down log is decomposing, that's a perfect setup. An oak leaf can create a 2-year habitat, while the other leaves, potentially a maple leaf or other leaves, buckthorn and honeysuckle leaves, they disintegrate within a year, within a growing season. So they like that as well. They're easy to get to, high carbohydrate. They can actually utilize that dead and dying material. This is a picture of what that soil looks like. This is my research that I did with Dr. Megan Midgley in our soil ecology lab. And this was just after 3 months. And that was, we experimented with density, but there were no more than 6 worms in any one pot. Often it was 2, 4, or 6. And it was quite astonishing to see how impactful it was in a short period of time. So what does it do? It can strip the organic layer. It can alter the soil structure. It can alter the soil pH and the chemistry. It just depends on what type of species is there. The castings, they can get all kind of blocky and they hold nutrients, and the gut is what causes it to kind of clump together. And oftentimes they can outcompete other worms. You rarely are ever going to see them together with, Lumbricus rubellus and jumping worms in one area. Jumping worms is a complex. There are 3 different types of species: Lumbricus rubellus. There's Amanthus agrestis, Amanthus tokiensis, and then Metaphyre is the bigger one. Oftentimes there are all 3 of them together. They are different sizes, so they can cohabitate with one another. So it's very interesting that we oftentimes, if you see one, you'll see two or three of the different types of species. Over on the right-hand side, we're talking about impacts to soil, before and after. So again, soil structure, the organic matter can be stripped away, water retention can be impacted, and the microbial life is disrupted. And I think that that's the next phase of research, if you will, for other interested professionals. Here's some idea for management. If you do have them, you just collect them, scoop them out, put them on the concrete on a hot, dry day, or bag them up in a plastic bag and throw them away. They can, they can withstand a little heat. If you think about a prescribed fire, it doesn't necessarily kill them, but they really don't like that hot, dry concrete. Right now, there is no chemical control. There's no pesticide that's related. Remember that the label is the law, and we have to follow the label instructions. Biochar is being tested. It changes the pH. Maybe that's increases it to a level that it's not palatable for them. So that's a really cool ongoing research that people are working on. More to come. If you want to get rid of them, you can pour vinegar and baking soda, although I'll be honest with you, I don't like doing that in my own garden beds. It just doesn't seem right. But there's a new research that Bavaria bassiana might knock that back, that they might predate on the cocoons and the worms. Bavaria bassiana is a highly potent fungi, and it's super cool. So stay tuned on that. There's more research that's coming out. And then do me a favor, always brush off your boots. If you are out walking, and what I like to do is, if I'm going to walk out in the forest, I'm going to put on my walking boots. And then when I finished, I shake my boots off, I brush my boots, and I change into a different pair of shoes, and my boots go in my car. I do not wear the same shoes that I hike in. And I think that that's a good best management practice. And then you can hold your plants. If you're buying some material and you're worried about jumping worms and things like that, I've done it. My front porch looks like a garden, right? I've got plants. I've held them for a couple of weeks, and then I inspect them. I look to see, is the soil look great? Is there some disturbance? Is there some wilting going on? What is going on? And if I want to, I can take them out. I then dip them into a bucket of warm water and then plant them in new soil in an area that I know is not infested. It's healthy soil. So those are just some management practices to think about. And you can wash them off. I just mentioned that. Here's a cool thing you can add. This is like a multi-year recovery plan, which I love, right? You can add organic matter. You can add mulch. And you're doing this to increase the fertility of your soil. You can rebuild microbial life by using compost. And then plant native plants, right? Native plants that have deep roots. And then basically, manage the population. If you see them, get rid of them right away. These are the field observations. I'll be honest with you, we need long-term studies. And so unfortunately, when there is not funding associated with a species like this, the research tends to drop off. So we're trying to figure out which plants are most effective in an area that we know we have an infestation. So are they depleting the species diversity? Is there more species taking over? So right now, those are good questions, research questions that can be answered. Monitoring, early detection, get out. If you see something, you can report it on EDSMAP, iNaturalist, or to University of Illinois Extension. What happens is that starts to normalize the distribution pattern. So if you got somebody in Southern Illinois, you've got somebody in Central Illinois, you've got somebody in Northern Illinois, if you're reporting that information, you're looking at it, what time, what was going on with the weather. It's really cool because that information is very valuable when you're developing models for invasive species. Quick update. I know we only got a few minutes. We've got the Illinois Invasive Species Council. Please, if you're interested, We are an all-volunteer board. It's a terrestrial, pests and pathogens, wildlife, and aquatic committees. We are a recommending board. We not do any regulation. We're committed to transparency, and we provide consistent messaging on invasive species. And then we do conduct assessments, and those assessments, once they are approved by the executive committee, will be made available to the public website from the DNR. Great online resources. The Illinois Department of Agriculture has got a great insects pest page, Illinois Invasive Species Awareness Management on Facebook. Find us, like us. And then the Plant Healthcare Report. If you want great information, you can scan that QR code and put your email address in, and you will get that Plant Healthcare Report delivered to your inbox during the growing season. Or you can certainly look on the Morton Arboretum website and look for the Plant Healthcare Report. It is a phenomenal report that talks all about pests, pathogens, what's going on. It is great. And then I mentioned earlier that Dr. Frederick Miller put together the 2025 Forest Health Highlights, and that should be on either the Department of Natural Resources or the Morton Arboretum. We have a free invasive species resource. So again, scan that QR code. That is an online management. If I were here with you guys, or we were all together, I would be able to hand you a newly updated copy, but that QR code should take you to the online resource. Also, hungrypest.com, Department of Agriculture, Natural Resources, Illinois Forestry Extension. Extension is a great resource, a great partner for us, as well as the Chicago Region Trees Initiative here at the Morton Arboretum, as well as the Illinois Forestry Association. Here's a great event. You guys hit that QR code. This is going to be so much fun. It's this Saturday. We are giving away red oaks, American plum, and hazelnut seedlings for everybody that's registered. And believe me, you won't want to miss it. It's from 9 to 2. You could come anytime. It's up in Pecatonica, which is about 30 miles, I think, north of, or 30 minutes north of Rockford. We've got the DNR mobile unit. We're going to conversation on foraging, soil health, sawmills, invasive species, and so much more. This is such a great program, and I hope you'll all join us for that. Last announcement, we can get to questions. Don't move firewood. Firewood's the number one way that our invasive species move around. So again, here's some QR codes for you. If you want to join IFA, be a Friends member, which is free. So definitely check out that QR code. Or if you're interested in the Society of American Foresters CEUs, you can scan that code and you can receive a credit, fill out the form, and that'd be great.